I do like to come back to the aspects of the permanent campaign. So I think that's a really important way of seeing things. It's every day. What can they do? And what issue can they use? Because that's also a part of their propagandistic efforts, is they need to be, on what's happening now. What's the agitory thing now? Oh, a shopping cart bumped into somebody's car and there was a fight and somebody filmed it. That's what's trending on these low-level dumb social networks. They want to get in on that. They want to turn it into something or more. They want to amplify whatever is wrong with your society and suppress what's ever right with it, or attack it, undermine it. Have somebody pay a bum to show up with a bag of sand or urine, and for $100 try to beam the speaker that's talking about, it could be the president of the United States, could be a general, it could be a physician, could be a professor. So they'll do it. And also the other aspect to remember is it's not just continuous campaign, it's international. So it's them being in your country, playing the part or the role of your countrymen, but they put the czar behind them on an international level. They're not your countrymen. They haven't been since they got onto the program. And so it's a mental exercise. Oh, look at this symbol, this flag, this is my country. That's all a mental exercise. They've severed those ties to you. But they still speak your language and they use the pretense of being a super patriot. When in fact they're nihilists, detached from any country. They've attached to a radicalized concept, a utopianism, a car gluingism, something that has conditioned them to believe that whatever they're doing, especially if it's subversive and hateful, that somehow justified revenge or a just act. That's how that's the other revolutionary aspect of it. So they've overcome morality with social justice. They've replaced it, and that social justice was redefined to them in such a way that, for example, gluing themselves to workmen's vans during rush hour, that's not only justified, but it's necessary to improve the planet. So these people, they're bouncing off of walls in prisons and in basements of lunatic asylums. But they're also, again, there's different degrees. There's the Che Guevara type, and all the way down to the woman that thinks it would be a bad idea to speak up against whatever a dominant group has been artificially injected into their social circles or into their propagandistic atmosphere. Some avenue, their phone, or there's some influencer, all of a sudden they got cut a check to have a popular opinion on something. And then you cross-reference that with other influencers, you see, oh, they have the exact same wording on this particular issue. Is it organized? Of course it's organized. Do they claim to be organized? No. They would dispute that they're doing it for anyone else. It was their opinion. They don't have to put up those words. This is a politically sponsored opinion. Just flows right in. Like, how about this? They'll be 95% on point because perhaps they've copied and pasted a legitimate analyst that they listen to because they're insiders. And then at the end, they'll put a 5% spin. Like, they'll either discredit what the real analysts say, or they'll just put some little drop of weakness in there, some little bit of legitimacy to the other side because they want to present themselves as fair-minded. They don't want to be closed-minded. This was also the conservative way of just letting these people wreck cohesion. Because these really aren't intellectual issues. Well, oh, here's another aspect of it. They're all into political filler. This is political and agitatory filler. So it's supposed to fill up your whole day like a bad gas, filling all aspects of whatever rooms you're in, putting you in a bad mood. Because if they gas you that way psychologically, then when some incident happens that they also organize and amplify, then they feel justified doing it. So you have stupid people conditioned over time to do stupid things, and then we have an informational sector that explains that away in ideological terms. Stockholm Syndrome. Well, we wouldn't have had to shoot you if they didn't try to rescue you. So they're the bad guys. And oh, if one guy didn't try to run away, we wouldn't have had to cut off this person's hands. So everybody shut up. And imagine in that type of schoolroom of the mind that they've been running in the West for decades. You'll get like the good student who, oh, I understand these terrorists better than they understand themselves. They want to be heroes for terrorism. Don't think it happens. It happens all the damn time. You just haven't figured it out. You just heard these words like, oh, there's a terrorist. What does that mean? Where were these people? What camps did they go to? What did they do in those camps? What did they learn? What principles did they unlearn? Like loyalty to country, loyalty to their countrymen, even remotely their culture and their heritage, everything, just for replaced with a radicalized, misleading principle. And then they have a hierarchy, a chain of command. So you have 10 suicide bombers, and then the person, the mullah or the teacher, or the guru that tells them partitions up the materials, and then gives them their marching orders. Now, of course, not all of them go according to plan. These people aren't all together there. So it's not like they're master criminals. They're really victims of brainwashing, you could say it that way. So, oh, they were so weak, they were brainwashed. Well, there's some really strong people that have been brainwashed. And you know what? The human animal wasn't built for these types of warlike conditions and environments and ruses and surprises and deceptions. We weren't built for this. We weren't. We believe what people tell us, usually, because that's how people evolved over time. Hey, buddy, there's a snake under that bush. Don't go there. Why in the hell would anyone imagine how much wasted time you have? Some cynic in the desert sitting there. Buddy, draw a cartoon about that, buddy. I don't believe you. Let's have a discussion. Do snakes even exist? What is a snake to you? Oh, snakes don't bite if you treat them right. If you give them respect. If you defer to them in their ways, then they won't bite you. You need to build up the relationship with the snake, and on and on. Imagine that desert conversation. over and over every day. We got at least 8 hours in these institutions we call schools. Call them something else. They're certainly not learning a lot of good things these days. And that's where we come back to also women, the whole women question. Look, women have been great companions and helps to men and their families since the beginning of time. It's never been easy, it's never been perfect the entire time. And yet, generally, those women who bring a lot to their families in the form of loving kindness and dedication and loyalty and purification and good spirits and optimism and flexibility and okay, let's do that, or okay, let's move here, I'll organize it. That's an evolutionary advantage. Now you train little girls from day one to be pouty, bossy, commandeering, insulted, frustrated, depressive, incompetent, incapable, overambitious, wanting the wrong things. Well, that's part and parcel to the continuous campaign. It's like being in a horrible social relationship, and yet that trickles down to individual ones, one after the next. So, no, that wasn't a normal condition between men and women. Now, I'm not saying it was always perfect in every case, but generally, it was generally acceptable to both parties. And there were some parties that had super normal experiences in that regard. And you can still have them today. You're always going to have subnormal, normal, and supernormal. But the supernormal, if we have a choice, why shouldn't we aim for that? That means also recognize women are completely different than men and have completely different areas that they specialize in and are naturally good at. They have other areas where they are not. They have blind spots. So men have their blind spots, women have more. One of the biggest ones is vanity. They think they can be puffed up to believe that they're all-knowing, that they're the best of their kind and they shouldn't be kept down. Well, do you, but don't think of setting that as a social norm. It's backwards. It's barbaric. And it doesn't work. And it's promoted because it doesn't work. So that's where we get back to the international. So the international is the destructive part of the process. So again, the despotic core, where the police state has been established, where there's no rule of law for these despots. They've even redefined the experiment that started way back when that they don't care about, but they do care about remaining in control and having all the power and all the impunity. That part they understand. They're outside vanguard forces. They just repurpose them to be destructive agents, saboteurs, underminers, attackers outside of their despotic core. They support them financially, from an organizational standpoint. And again, they're very deceptive about the people organizing it. No, they're not doing that. They're doing high-minded things. You just don't understand it. You're the bad guy. You're the hateful. But they like to switch, like to do the whataboutism on morality a lot. Oh, I'm not evil for wanting this evil thing. You're evil for wanting to stop this evil thing. So they can get into that level of neutral sophistry because there's nothing there. Like a normal person would think they would have some pain of conscience. They don't. It's a complete farce and a game for them. It's their role, their theatrical role as an imposter. And they accept that role, and it has its benefits. They get all different types of benefits for doing that, especially social benefits and financial benefits. So for them, that's just their daily job. It's their bread and butter. It's their cheese and potatoes. It's their onions and burgers. So, but again, we're trained differently, right? The bourgeois, we're trained to be honest, to pursue the truth, to be someone who looks into things from a variety of different angles. Fairness, how about this fairness? Big idea we all get drilled into us. But they don't have that. They have cheat to win. Cheaper the better, quicker the better. More sophists the better. More powerful the better. Might makes right, that's it. So give these people a bunch of fantasy ideas that will not match up. You're going to beat a cheating tennis player? Maybe. I mean, you might be a super duper player, but just imagine, not only do they cheat, but then they've got the umpire bribe. Are you going to win? If they don't want you to win, are you going to win? No matter how good you are. Just think about that conundrum for a second. So, but the winning move is not continuing to play under those circumstances. It's to disengage. So and this is very hard for people to do. It's very hard for Westerners to do. Westerners want to be materialists. They want to be empiricists. They want to be rational. They want. But not wanting that is the way they should be. Because you're wanting something that's not there. And what that means is suffering. And once you get rid of those expectations, you get rid of those drillings, you get rid of those biases, you get rid of those conditionalities, well, then you just say, this is reality. This is what it is. How about this? You can have someone you trusted who was 100%. They go crazy. But they run the whole department. They run the company. They run the country. That will never stop being a factor. And it's certainly a factor today. I also want to emphasize the strength of these people in the despotic core. Don't overestimate it. These people are fools on a variety of levels. It's just they have a certain degree of murderous cunning to them. And of course, organization, cooperation, proliferation. It's unbelievable how much they've been able to proliferate this stuff in broad daylight and not have any pushback of any appreciable measure. But will that situation continue as things go radically south in a multitude of different of places and directions? Will that continue? Is that a wise assumption to have? And what does that mean for them? Well, I venture to guess it's not going to mean good things for them. Bad people expecting good things, don't think that has ever held up since the creation of the universe. Nor will it ever be true in the future. And so bad people have bad ideas. They think it's going to continue getting bad for everyone else. But sometimes it flips just suddenly because they're not all-knowing creatures. They don't have a lock or a monopoly on the future. That then it snaps. And a lot of people go away. Good ones, but also a lot of bad ones. More bad ones, I would say, finally. And so the good wins out in the end. And yet, if you can speed up, hasten the disengagement from bad things, bad people, and certainly being agitated all the time, because that is their MO. That's how they get you, burning up time, wasting it, because you don't have sati, you don't have clarity. You get back to the clarity of our ancestors. You're doing things, even if they're simple things like carving a staff, a walking staff, or mending your wide-brimmed hat, and perhaps brewing some excellent herbal tea. Then you've reclaimed your birthright, even in this postmodern, neo-barbaric time. And yet, when was the world ever civilized enough that someone would give themselves permission to do those things or not do those things? So be optimistic. Being good is its own reward. So be good, and being foolish is not good. One important point to note is that what is misnomered as liberal democratic politics, which is more or less the subversionist, synthetic version of politics that are super unpopular in all Western countries, it's also super unpopular outside Western countries. So imagine the stories you're getting about the U.S. is just anarchy and pride parades and all of that. So the domestic audience that doesn't like that, except for a radicalized minority of people, just imagine in like conservative agrarian countries like Bolivia or Colombia, or God forbid, of Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, or conservative Muslim countries that see that, and then it's not just sanctioned or allowed to happen, but has ministerial approval. Like, for example, the foreign ministry will hoist a gigantic gay flag, and they'll come and take pictures of that and then put that into their propaganda pipes for their domestic audience. Look, the West is horrible. The West is degenerate. The West is rotten. And so just imagine that. So not only as a Westerner do you have the obnoxiousness that these people exude, but that's just one fraction of it. They might not even think your country to be all that important. But if they can make it look bad continually, then it supports their narrative that they're better with their authoritarian neo-Leninist regime. Because also they only send official stories to places like the Ministry of Information in Venezuela that tweets out like 1,000 messages a day supporting the Russian narrative. And you've got Nicaragua and Cuba and a bunch of other countries that have been wrecked on that level, information level. And then they're using the Spanish language. Then there's Spain. There they are signaling every day. Oh, it's Ukrainian Nazis that attacked us and blew up the dam and all that stuff. And just imagine, these countries don't have any newspapers. They don't have any official. All they got is like WhatsApp and a couple of other random divided news sources. And then imagine they have their trolls. They're just posting all day long because they get paid to do it, but they're not. They're misrepresenting themselves as being activists or citizen journalists or just even an information source. So what are peasants and farmers and people stuck in vans checking their phones going to do? Are they going to log into a foreign language program and double check the information? Or are they cooked? Are they just socially, politically, economically limited to misinformation? It's just how their phone came with 3 channels, and all of them are disinfo. But they're official disinfo, or maybe unofficial disinfo. My cousin said that aliens landed in Rio de Janeiro because he read this story, and then he sends a link, creating the nihilistic informational atmosphere that, oh, nobody can ascertain the truth because Russia might have done this, but what about this? So then they got the whataboutism, always countering, always partisan, always on the left side. But not just left side, they got the right side. So they share the issues on family values, but oh, surprise, surprise, they're pro-Russian. Because that's how the Russians present themselves. We're pro value, family values. When in fact, if you look, what family values does Prigozhin have? Like his lair. It's funny, they came out with the photos. He had wigs, he had uniforms, eyewear. So when he rolls around worldwide, he won't be recognized. Uniforms. So just imagine what type of lives these international actors are rolling in. And these are countries with which we considered normal up until the full-scale invasion. Who and all and sundry were asleep at the wheel for that to happen? Oh, we beat them. We won the Cold War. That's what they said. The whole time they were just placing their agents with no pushback at all because there was no threat. So, oh, that was back then. Like they call it even now, Cold War mentality. That's somebody who's reacting to their like whole scale, wide scale, asynchronous, simultaneous, 24/7, 365 attacks. Because you do need to think of misinformation as an attack. Here you get something official looking. Just imagine 50% of people IQ of 100 and below. It says this, oh, U.S. is the great Satan. All the Americans are, DLers. That even if they claim they're not gay, actually are a type of just pugilistic, village pugilist, smear propaganda. And these people, because they get at least one article about that a day, maybe even more, maybe that just makes up the entirety of their news feed. Outrage, disinformation. What do these people think if they meet you at the airport? Or will they change their life plans to go to a place that is represented in such a clownish light, and then just multiply that factor over time? And the potential of people that might have been exposed to that information, that they would look at you strange if you said that life isn't like that at all. That we don't like these people either. But somehow they've materialized in our top leadership positions on a whole different, unexpected industries as well. You have economy, cultural institutions, educational institutions, the academy, HR, and all this toxic blob. Where did it come from? We won the Cold War. Well, no, you didn't. So also think of new metaphors for disinfo. So you should turn left. The sign points right. There's a sign for a cliff. Don't go, stop here. And they put a sign over it that says hit the gas. So essentially that's what they're doing on every issue, including their infamous murderous acts. That they're the just party and everyone else is just lying about them. So, and they're active. This is the continuous campaign, neo-Leninism. So you have fake opposition. That's one way. You have just the straight up lunatics, straight out in the open. I'm proud of myself for being a piece of crap, of a lunatic, someone who's been reprogrammed to be traitorous. Because in their mind, again, they're fighting against the Tsar, right? The Tsar was all evil, and their new buddies, everything they do is justified. Because they're the victims, see, and because they're the victims, they can never be wrong. And so they utilize that subnormal psychology. All the way, again, to mass violence. And then just think, you show up in a foreign country and you say you're from a country that these disinfo agents have poisoned the minds of some person. Oh, he's here to steal the resources of the country. He's not here to try to get some business off the ground that could benefit everyone a lot more than people could possibly calculate. But they don't want that because they want monopoly control. They don't want any type of competition anywhere. That they don't have a cutoff or all of it. How about this? They don't want a cut, they want it all. So they're willing to just let entire industries atrophy, entire segments of the population because it suits their personal interests. You don't think that there's people like that? There's always been people like that. But now we're dealing with a networked entity in multiple fields all at the same time. It's the only way it works. Which brings me back again to the toxic blob. Toxic blobs don't get voted in or out. The ball gets rolling on them and they stay toxic. So once they're captured, there might be, again, some old timers that want to retire early. After that, there's nothing worth saving. They're just facades. So that's the extent of the termite damage in the institutions. They're gone. It's dry rot and termites. So when will it fall down? Who knows? See, this is the whole thing about disinformation. Even if it did fall down, they'll have a story how they're going to build it back better. That's it. So on to the next lie for the next day. That's what they understand political operation to be. Have this aura of a person that cares. In fact, it's a self-enrichment scheme for a minority of very amoral, degenerate, and hateful people. And do realize when they say hate, what they're hating is they're hating class enemies, which are people that would have challenged them for a legitimate claim on their authority. So just think of the mentality these people have and how incongruent that is with any well-managed system or country or organizing body. And yet they're totally and utterly convinced that they're on the right side of history. So people are cooked. People do make their beds and they do need to lie in them. So although it might be mean some suffering for you to hear the truth, just consider that insignificant to living a life misdirected by these nefarious people. So less is more. Less information. You don't need to be a fly trap for misinformation. You need to reduce, again, agitation. Permanent agitation. That's their game. So you're on their wavelength. You're being agitated. You're interacting. You're building a bridge. Don't do that. Disengage. You can see it. You can categorize it. Like this is a certain type of insect. Here's the dung beetle again. Here's a flying dung beetle, but you don't have to spend your whole day ranting and raving about it. The cootie of your mind is not always perfect. You want to sleep? There's the sound of the gecko. Are you going to let it agitate you? No, that's not good practice, is it? It's just like this. It's just like that. And yet the kuti of your mind is mostly serene, or at least it should be. Should be orderly, it should be dusted. It's a very small space. You don't need to overdo it, you don't need to underdo it. So the solitude of your kuti is also the space in your mind that you take refuge in, and yet there are storms. It's possible a tile could get ripped off. It's possible something needs to be replaced. That's just the way it is. That's life. But be happy that you have the opportunity to do it and to learn from the experience when you do it. Because it can be quite insightful all the time. That's sati all the time. The military is a rather dangerous and frightful thing to contemplate, and yet here we see in modern times that if you didn't have a counterforce to what are essentially greedy and violent people that are also delusional, because see, they have their version of reality. They're going in to take something back that they think belongs to them. For example, this is the story they cooked up for themselves. Which is why there's a very good use for international law, because then you have courts that can say, look, this is the boundary. This is the established boundary. We had surveyors come from your side and from our side, and they both signed off on it. There is no territorial dispute. This is a sovereign country. And then there's witnesses, and it's all signed up. It's made into a memorandum, the Budapest Memorandum of, was it 94 or 91? And those types of agreements, if they are honored by all parties, that means that the issue is settled. The issue has been decided. And yet we see in modern times that these agreements last for a certain time, and then if one party doesn't agree, if there's different people in the franchise that see things differently, read different history books or understood history to be different, came to radically different conclusions about history based on past conceptions. How about conceptions of empire? Imagine if tomorrow England would just decide to reinvent the empire. It could do it. So, but then there are consequences of that. Like the border. No, that's not. That was a fake border. And this is why ill will is a really bad thing on an international level. Because, for example, just promoting anti-Americanism from a political standpoint, just because you're trying to poison the well for geopolitical reasons, that's caused a lot of ill will and bad feeling, and a lot of it just completely unnecessarily so. Cherry picking the worst things out and amplifying that, spreading that for the purpose of division. And they call it pollution or poisoning people's minds against other people in the world that don't even realize that that's a political policy and is being carried out on a massive level. Like every day social media is being polluted. So that's not contributing to world peace. That's not moving towards a peaceful situation. That's moving towards conflict. And it is a political decision to decide to put yourself on the path of conflict, because it is an intentional decision. You can see things the wrong way, like, oh, I got the short end of the stick on this deal, when in fact, for example, you're the biggest country on earth and have an expansionist franchise. So a lot of these arguments that they come up with are self-rationalizing, of intentionally so. So that is crossing over the line of hostilities. That's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. And to governments that engage in that, they're unacceptable. And they should be exposed for it. People should know this is what they're doing. This is their way of doing it. This is how they're doing it. This is what they're saying. And to clarify that, I think it's a civic duty. But at the same time, it's also a good idea to get better. I think both sides could benefit greatly from the feedback that both sides are giving. One side's giving feedback, the other side's giving alternative reality. Why? And if we go back into ancient history, I mean, there were all different types of personalities that moved world history for good and for bad. A lot of it bad, but a lot of it, finally, what can one say is good or bad in this world, which is a mix. Think of the Taoist yin and yang symbol. This is a very ancient symbol. And this is an idea, a metaphor a reality that they conveyed to your very mind, to this very instant, the instant you see it. But overly taking responsibility for historical occurrences is not the path to Nibbana. It's not the path to a right view. So we can also see that materialism, the greed behind wanting more than what you have, it's such a fatal flaw to have. It's over-ambition. It's wanting too much. It's the definition of greed. When you have enough, you have more than enough, and yet you want more. Well, what does that cause? That causes conflict. Conflict. It causes a lot of tragedy, a lot of injury, a lot of, you can do a lot less in environments where greedy people are trying their darndest to get something that doesn't belong to them, but they think it does. So we can see it clearly on the international stage. This is bad. Greed is bad. Overambition is bad. You take your arrow, you aim, and then you shoot it straight up into the sky. It's not hitting the target. You put it all the way down to your feet. Shoot the ground. You're not hitting the target. It's in the middle path. Not too much. Just imagine going back into a group of primates. And these primates have all these bananas, but you've got a bush of grapes that only you know about. And so you don't run into that group and try to pull off some bananas. That's not wise. It's not wise to desire it. It's also not wise to get it. Because what do you get? You get what the other ones want. There's going to be conflict. Now sometimes it's unavoidable, but a lot more times it is avoidable. Certainly on the level of international politics. And so we can see the absurdity of it in even a greater light. Because it's a greater mechanism, it's a greater development than oneself. It's a social development. It's infecting entire nations, right? Millions of people all at once because of policy decisions. Now, of course, there's been, because people claim different theories for why they're doing it, you have to get through that delusion matrix to see the reality, the simple reality, for what it is. You could see it as a metaphor, a teaching parable, what not to do in one's own individual life. Because it is, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, so it's good for the individual not to be greedy. And more so when states are not greedy. It's really a question, where does the greed begin, in what area, and then all aspects of life, perhaps even cultural life. Cultures that devolve into greed. And how do they do it? Well, they think they're getting better, but they're delusional. They're actually just getting greedier. And so they're taking more than they need, more than is good. They're the locust of the bad. Which is why we have a lot of city deserts. Where are all the people? They're all working. They don't have time to live. They don't have time to enjoy. They're deferring life in a neo-Calvinist manner, which is totally delusional. Competing amongst my peers for material wealth, so that I can make displays of those wealths to thereby cement my understanding of me being some kind of virtuous person, or someone who has achieved a lot. Like, just imagine like these little league trophies. You just have a huge collection of that, like a whole garage full. You're working on the next one. Why? So we could also be set out like racehorses, right? Hit on the track, trained to go, to run. Okay. But the longer you live, it's much more skillful to slow down a little bit. And people say enjoy life, but that's not a roadmap. It's not a practice. And there's also the assumption, or the imperative to enjoy, right? Which is a level that is perhaps not sustainable. Whereas just existing is good enough. You want to get to the lowest floor. You want to get to the ground floor. It is. So give yourself the permission to live, to exist, to be aware, to have sati. Pull back, pull the reins, stop the chariot. get out and sit down, breathe a little bit. The breath is always with you. And yet, how mindful are you of the breath in a day, in the course of a day or night? How many seconds have you been able to devote to one pointedness? Like riding a bike, you can fall off real quick. My guess is your practice is still quite distracted, even after perhaps even years of practice, but maybe not. Some people get it quick. It's like the next time they hear the chime of a bell, they'll remember to remember. Ding.